All right, I think we're getting close to started. I think everybody is in the right room. I hope we are going to hear from Jeremy Phelps. Subject is tools and approaches for managing content, accessibility, and web identity at scale. A couple of things before we begin. If you're in the wrong room, this is time to find the right one. We're all in the right place. I'm going to shut the door. Everyone with devices and things like that, phones, please silence them. Remember to do that for courtesy. We have surveys for your questions and comments about today's presentation. They are hard copy here if you want one last meeting. They're also online. Easier and probably more convenient for everyone. We're going to introduction about Jeremy Phelps. Jeremy is the senior WordPress developer at Washington State University. He's a WordPress core committer and the maintainer of VVV, which I think you can tell you what that stands for. He believes in free and open source software and enjoys being part of the WordPress community. As I'm sure we all do. He will encourage you to share your work. Jeremy?
Great.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Round of applause, please.
That was easy. All right, so let's get to it. In October of 2016, we received a word from through the Washington State Attorney General's office that WSU had a complaint filed against it from the Department of Education's Office of Civil Rights, OCR. The complaints listed several different URLs across the university that were not accessible and did not meet WCAG 2.0 AA guidelines. I'm looking around and this seems like a familiar story that you've heard before. It was a tough time. Yes, a story of beer. So it was one of those things where I'd always thought, you know, this is the kind of thing that happens to other people, other universities. Like, we do a pretty good job. We think about accessibility. We talk about accessibility. We read about accessibility. I retweet tweets about accessibility. Whenever I'm at a conference, I make sure I go attend accessibility talks because it's all great information, and I love hearing experts like tell me what I should be doing. Fortunately, we don't actually apply all of that knowledge all the time. Maybe we think there's not enough time, or who knows. Then you have another thought that hits you, and you say, like, well, this is a complaint from the Office of Civil Rights. Like, I'm not just failing as a web developer, I'm violating somebody's civil rights here at some level, which is a pretty disappointing feeling. So you think again, like, all right, it's time to get to work. We have a lot of stuff to do. So when we got the complaint, there's the little bit of fear, like I screwed up, but then also there was kind of this sense of relief. Somebody finally called us on it. So now we're going to actually have some support. There's going to be some reason to get the time and to maybe get some more money, some resources to get behind the effort and to make things more accessible. And then also over the last 4 years, we've been preparing quite a bit in how we manage our web identity, how we manage content at the university. So there's a part of me that's kind of excited, like now we get to go try to solve this problem at scale and do things in a good way. So our agreement with the OCR so far, I think it's pretty close to complete, is that as of June 30th, a couple weeks ago, any new content we publish at the university must be WCAG 2.0 AA compliant. By September, everybody that creates content on the web at the university must go through an annual web accessibility training. And then in 2 years, I don't know if we have the final date set yet, but sometime in 2018 or 2019, all content published after 2014 must have been updated to be WCAG 2.0 AA accessible. So we have about 2 years to solve all of this, and we're looking forward to it. So I started at Washington State University about 4 years ago, this Sunday, 2 days from now. And I work as part of the university communications team. So the central kind of marketing group. We used to be called Marcom, then Marketing Communications, then University Communications, all that. This is my only time in higher ed, besides a month-and-a-half janitor stint at University of Illinois when I was a lot younger. And I've never had experience outside of the central group. So a lot of this is coming from me as somebody in central communications and kind of the way that I view the way that web identity works and content works within the university. when I got to WSU, they had already made the decision to move to WordPress. That was one of the reasons they hunted me down and got me to come out to Pullman, start working on the web there. And I think it's great. The decision was made by people above me, kind of, in the hierarchy. So there wasn't a lot of convincing that had to be done there. The only convincing that's needed to be done is kind of just throughout all of the content creators at the university, which has been fine too. It's been a great community. I think the ethos of WordPress, democratizing publishing free and open source software, matches up well with the public land grant institution and kind of the mission that we have. And now 4 years later, we have a big single installation of WordPress. It runs multi-network, multi-site. We have 60 networks, 1,500 sites, 4,600 users, all managing content in some way at the university. There's a mix of department sites. All 12 WSU colleges have some site on there. All of our campuses have some site on there. Research labs, student clubs. We haven't opened it up for like full open registration yet, but that's one of the things I think will take that number from 1,500 up to who knows what. We'll see. As I go through all this stuff, everything's available at github.com/Washington State University. I'm giving you that here because with this long of an organization name, none of the URLs fit on the other slides. So everything else would be GitHub/whatever the repo name is. But all the work that we do, we try to make open source first. I think we have 2 private repositories out of 250 that we have on GitHub. And it's, yeah, well, yeah, we'll see. We'll get into it. So web identity, I wanted to come up with a slide that kind of explained why branding and technology guidelines are important, so that when you're giving talks like this, you don't end up with slides that look like this. And when you're building websites, you don't end up with websites that look like that. But the mission of the university is an important thing. And when you're publishing content on the web as a member of the university, then you should be aware at some level of how that voice is being spent. Everybody still should have their own voice, but what you're communicating really does come with kind of the power of the university behind you. So it's important, I think, after being part of the marketing team for 4 years, to have a consistent brands, a consistent kind of set of technologies to help explain how to do things on the web. If you don't, and so I'm a developer, so I spend a lot of time managing my own stack. I mean, I guess I believe in reinventing the wheel because that's what I do all the time. But I often preach that it's nice if people don't reinvent the wheel because there's a lot of stuff to think about. And when you're a researcher, you should probably be spending a lot of time thinking about your research and not a lot of time thinking about how you're hosting your website. And all the things that you have to think about add up really quickly. So who's managing your server? Is it patched on a regular basis? How are you handling HTTPS? Is your CMS up to date? Are you using semantic HTML? Is your content accessible? All of this stuff comes into play. And so if you're spending all of the time thinking about that, then who's really thinking about whether or not the users are finding what they're looking for? And that's the most important thing. So no matter what, we want users throughout the university to be able to find what they're looking for, and if they're not able to find what they're looking for, move on to places that can show them. And I guess my description for what helps users the most in that is having a consistent navigation on almost every page, and then a consistent place where they can get back to a central point. So whether it's the WSU homepage or a search page or an index page. So that as a user, when I'm reading all this content, I know there's an exit path available to me if I'm not in the place that I want to be. Because so a user comes to a website, they might go to hydrogen.wsu or wsu.edu or labs.wsu.edu. They don't know that these are 3 different sites. They think that this is part of the same ecosystem, and that's, I mean, effectively how they should think because they are all WSU sites. So the goal is to create some kind of single silo that helps people maneuver around throughout. I'll get to tech stuff at some point, but so far the most important thing for us about creating a consistent web identity has been through our community. So when I started at WSU, we had just started a new iteration of our web identity. So we were going through the process of determining what it should look like and what it should do. And what we did first is create an open source repository and start adding code there. Started talking to different groups around campus, sent out emails at the listservs. We had an open forum where we sat down and explained kind of our objectives. We engaged developers so they could explain their concerns, and because it's kind of fun to try to get everybody, all of these different groups, using this JavaScript and this CSS that you're writing. I know as a developer, I don't often want to do that myself. So that was a good process. In the future, I think we're going to just continue to adapt that, continue to push open source contributions. In 2014, I read an article by Michelle Tarvey, who's the director of web and new media at Lemoyne College. And she talked about this new format of open labs. And it blew my mind immediately because it's pretty obvious. But she talked about not having time to support everybody across the university with the WordPress or web concerns, whatever, and then having a block of time every Friday that people could stop by and get support. So the week later, we started our own open labs on Friday mornings from 9:30 to 11:30. I invited the WSU web community to come and just ask questions whenever they want. And it's been going strong for 3 years now. Every Friday, between 5 and 20 people show up, and we share stories and share technology. We show off previews, and I think it's been the single most important thing towards starting to have a really good, solid web identity throughout the university, is just engaging and creating that community. And then along with that, we created another Slack organization where anybody with a wsu.edu email can sign up and talk about the web throughout the week. And it takes some of the burden off of the central group because people can start to answer each other's questions once you have on it. The second most important thing for us in establishing kind of a consistent identity is having central assets posted and available, rather than giving everybody kind of these guidelines on how they should implement navigation or how they should implement this typography or colors. Have a central spot that hosts the CSS file and the JavaScript file. The one mistake that we probably made this last iteration that we're going to work out this time is, so we hosted these kind of like jQuery at a repo.wsu.edu/spine/major version number /spine.css. But WSU Spine is what we call our current web identity. So when we have bug fixes and enhancements that we're shipping to that, accessibility fixes, if you're using that URL, it's cached in the user's browser for an hour or 2 hours. So we know that as soon as we push updates, within an hour, all the university sites are gonna have something. We also gave people the option to choose a specific version and stick to it. We found that if you give that option to people and they use it, they're less likely to ever upgrade that again. So there's still several university sites now that are on this 1.0.0 or 1.0.1 version where we all get busy and then forget to check back later and see how things have progressed. So I think in the future, we're going to really stress using just this one repo URL, and so that all the updates can be posted automatically. And at the same time, we have it available through GitHub so everybody can collaborate and ask questions and report bugs and all this stuff. The current layers of our identity right now are broken out like this. So you can get this at GitHub at the WSU Spine repository if you want. We break it into web identity, which is our navigation. It's a vertical navigation with the university mark at the top and some info at the bottom. We created a responsive grid. It may or may not have been a bad idea. But at the time, in 2013, we were using an identity that had been around for a while and was not mobile friendly, was not responsive in any way. So the university was really struggling, and everybody wanted to create these mobile friendly sites. Back then, it was still enough of a new thing, but kind of silly that we hadn't caught up yet. So we introduced the responsive grid that, similar to Bootstrap or Foundation or something, provided some kind of column structure. And then we said, the rest of it is up to you. You can decide, besides this navigation, you can do whatever you want to with the content. And so that looks kind of like this. We asked for 198 pixels. That navigation kind of floats depending on how wide the screen is. And then we create some sort of grid system to fill in, and then you can do whatever you want to with the design. And that's worked out pretty well. but we've gotten a lot of feedback over the last few years, and so we're going to be mixing this up for the next one, which we're working on now to hopefully start implementing in the next couple months. That's also on GitHub at WSU Web Framework. And we're really focusing now on breaking apart the identity so that we concentrate on the university's global identity, which is like how Washington State University is written, and then what the official marks are. And then the web identity, which is more specifically like what colors look good on the web versus in print or something. Really making sure the color palette is accessible, establishing how the colors can be used, good type, all of the good stuff. And then instead of providing a responsive framework this time, we're going to just start focusing on web components. That's something that's been popular recently because of React and Vue and Polymer and all of that. But rather than using a specific technology, we're going to step back and just describe those components. So we're hoping to just publish, you'll see it on media sites quite a bit, more than any, component style guides that show how to use this HTML structure, how to use the CSS for it, and then create documentation around that. So then that frees developers around campus up for using other frameworks like Bootstrap or Foundation. Frees us up as a Centra group to really start playing with other technologies to see if we can build a site in CSS Grid and really make it work without having to, pressure the entire university to do all their content in CSS Grid. So it's going to be fun. So that's web identity. The second thing is content, obviously. All of this, think about in the context of accessibility, because that's where it's all leading. Because this is all my thought process towards getting through a consistent web identity, consistent content, and then to a place where we can actually have an accessible web without much more effort. So there's a lot of content published at the university. If you go to Google and type in site:/wsu.edu, there's about 5.2 million results. If you go to page 10 in there, it stops giving them to you, so I have no idea if that's true or not. You just have to assume that there's a lot of stuff out there. And so one of the things with managing all this content and trying to make it accessible is being aware of where it is and who owns it, how often it's being updated, all of that, which is something that you can't get from Google. So I can't query Google and say, show me all of the pages. I can do some stuff, but show me all the pages owned by Jeremy Felt on the web team that have been published in the last year or something, or since 2014, so that I know what needs to be updated for accessibility reasons. So what we did, obviously, because we're developers, is decide to write our own web crawler. So this is my first foray into Node development. Matt Mullenweg told us a couple years ago, learn JavaScript deeply. I kind of ignored that for a good year and a half or so. But then when I started poking around at what it would take to do a web crawler, it became obvious that Node is a pretty good answer. There's a lot of great tools out there that you can take advantage of. So that's available at GitHub at WSU Web Crawler. What that does is takes advantage of Elasticsearch and basically goes out and it starts at wsu.edu or whatever URL you give it, and then just crawls just like a web crawler. Finds all the anchor elements, visits all the URLs, gets all the content. We log a few specific things like what version of the identity they're using, if we can detect that. What version of our analytics are being used, if we can detect that. The host name. I think we have plans to add more metadata to that as we go so that we can really build this collection of data, because once you have the data in some place, you can really start to do some stuff with it. This I'm trying to make as organization agnostic as possible. This is also my first Node app. So I would love it if you'd go check it out, see what it would take to use within your organization. And then if you are a Node developer, help me out. But so far, this has been running for a month straight after a few false starts where I had to delete all the data and start over again and delete all the data and start over again. We've detected 2,200 subdomains that are currently serving web traffic. We've scanned 2.7 million URLs, and the list of URLs to scan is already up to 2 other million. So I think there's a good chance we're going to blow the 5.2 million number out of the water, which is kind of a bummer. Some of it's good because like our library system has 5 or 6 different domains that use these web apps that generate just hundreds of URLs per page. So some of this is kind of, the web crawler is not smart enough to skip some duplicate content. But it's a lot of stuff. But what's great is we now have it in one place, so we can look at it and figure out, how to start working with it. And with Elasticsearch, let me check. Yep. All right. We'll get there. Elasticsearch gives us like a common place for us to put the content that's published across the university. So even though we have a centrally supported CMS built on WordPress, it's all opt-in. So you can use Drupal, you can use Sitecore, Dreamweaver, whatever is going on. We try to make it really appealing, like we're free, come host with us. But some people want to use what they want to use. And then there's pages that have been around since 2000, who knows what, that are still just out there and need to be indexed. But once we know where it is, we can start doing some stuff with it. So how many people use multi-site? Good number of people. One of the biggest questions with multi-site and one of the biggest pains is I want to have a central media library, or I want to have a central post library, and I want to be able to use that on every single site. And then you look at the data structure of multi-site, and it's impossible. There's not really much multi about it. It's really just a whole bunch of different things using the same WordPress installation. So this gives us a way to put all that content in a central location so that we can start pulling it back out again. And Elasticsearch is pretty powerful for that. You can, and as long as you index your stuff properly, you can do some pretty powerful queries to get it out. That said, I do have a tool for you that will actually use WordPress and the REST API. So it's WCWP Content Syndicate, also on the GitHub repo. What this does is makes external requests from one site in PHP to other sites on your multi-site platform, or any WordPress site with a REST API. And using a shortcode, users can say pull in 5 posts from news.wsu.edu. You can do different things like display different types of output. So if I want 5 headlines, or if I want 10 excerpts, or if I even want full post contents, I can choose that in the shortcode. And then you can offset it too, so that you can pull in 1 with an excerpt, 10 with headlines. You can pull it from many different sites. So it's helped our users really start to create these kind of more live pages. So when you go to business.wsu or vca.wsu, instead of having a lot of just static content that's hard to make fresh, things are kind of flowing better. Tried to abstract things in a way so they can be extended relatively easily. So we've now have 2 extensions to it. One's for Events Calendar, and Events Calendar Pro, and then another for our internal people directory. So it's not too hard to get in there and write an extension for another post type so that you can start to share that. So we've had a lot of success using it for posts and using it for calendar events. So it's been a great tool for us. I think if you ask anybody that's using WordPress at WSU, this is the thing they're most happy about right now. The other cool project that I'm really excited about that we're working on is the WSU People Directory. And this is new for us, is we're trying a new model of managing the content. So that how do I have central posts or central media libraries? That's what we're trying to do, is people.wsu.edu is going to host all of our people. So you'll have a record for Jeremy Felt and a profile and biographies of various sorts or whatever. And then in the admin on, we'll call it like the hub and spoke system. So that's the hub site. And then all of the spoke sites, you can load up the people directory there and say, I want to add Jeremy Felt to this site. It'll pull all of my data from people.wsu with the REST API into the admin, let you edit that data if you have access to it, and then let you build these directory pages like faculty pages using all of that. So it maintains kind of one source of truth, the central stuff at people.wsu, and lets you use those people in multiple places. Because one of the bigger problems is if you can't share that content in a good way, then you're going to be bouncing around and trying to keep things updated in several different places. This we have written, it's like still alpha beta mode, so we're getting there. But we're excited about it because we're going to take this and then apply that to calendar events pretty soon. So then all events across the university will be stored at calendar.wsu.edu, and then you'll be able to edit those and create those from other spoke sites and have them publish on the central site. Which gives us a lot of hope for how we're managing content in the future. Also, when I first started, we worked on a university taxonomy that tries to apply kind of a schema to all this in a way. Because universities change a lot and colleges move and departments move, and you know, one day your department's named this and then the next day you have a big donor and it's named this. So we went with academic subjects and tried to kind of do the Library of Congress, Wikipedia type thing, and just make things as basic as possible. So that when you write content at the university, or when you have sites, or when you have people, you can assign a taxonomy to them that says this person's interested in hydrogen, this person's interested in cryogenics, or whatever. And then hopefully, we're still getting to this point, but in the future, when you're writing content in WordPress, we'd like to be able to surface stuff and say, we detected this keyword, like artificial intelligence. Did you know this person across the university that you haven't met before just posted an article on artificial intelligence and tagged it the same way? And then to start introducing people based on the stuff that they're writing. And then to make it easier for users too on the front end for just browsing content across many sites at once. I always said that my dream is, it's a silly dream, to go home at night and to be able to catch up on the research that's happening at the university just by scanning through like a topic that I'm interested in, because we've convinced enough people to share their work every day. We'll see, we'll get there one day. Yeah, once you control the content, you can start playing with it in lots of different ways. So I guess one of our goals here is going to be, you know, how do you maintain accessible HTML structures across 1,500 sites, millions of pages? What's the best way of doing that? These tools are not my tools, but they're great tools. So WP CLI, is anybody not using WP CLI? Well, that's great. So everybody knows. Not using, yep, okay. Well, check it out. If you've ever needed to search and replace anything in WordPress, this is the best tool for it. There is no other good tool for search and replace in WordPress. I'm sorry to any plugin developers. But it's a great way to find where things are being used. You can scan an entire multi-site install with just one command. It's not the most efficient, but it'll work. And it can come in handy, especially for, you know, shipping sites from staging to production or whatever, and just changing all those URLs. It's great. Shortcode UI. So shortcodes, when it comes to managing the HTML structure of content and really having a handle on how things are presented, shortcodes are good. They can also get out of hand. But that lets your users obviously put in just one block, and then you can fill it in with all HTML structure. Shortcode UI is a great project that provides a UI for the user when they're inserting shortcodes, and then also embeds the shortcode in their TinyMC editor as if it was on the front end. So if you're writing custom shortcodes, you can also add just a little bit of extra code to also add a UI to that, which is a lot friendlier to users when they're putting those through. And the benefit of using shortcodes, probably the biggest benefit, is that you can then change that HTML structure in the future. So if you notice something's inaccessible, then you can go in and update it. Which makes me really excited for Gutenberg, even though I haven't used it extensively yet. But the story I've told myself in my brain is that this is the blocks API that Gutenberg uses is effectively similar to shortcodes, and then I'm going to be able to describe an HTML structure for content. Users aren't going to have to worry about it, but then I can change it at any time later to adapt it to anything that we're doing, whether it's changing a new theme or making things accessible. Has anybody not heard of Gutenberg? All right. So Gutenberg is going to be the new WordPress editor experience, probably by 5.0 or 5.1, maybe a little later, we'll see. But a lot of resources are being spent working on it right now by Automatic and others in the community. And you can check it out both through the WordPress plugin repository and through GitHub under the WordPress organization. And it really is a cool interface so far. It kind of gets rid of TinyMCE completely and has a much more closer to what you see is what you get interface. And then has a blocks API that developers will be able to use to describe their own blocks, which is a lot of fun because I think for the most part, we use a page builder at WSU. And for the most part, this will get rid of the need for us to use a page builder because people will be able to describe their content more rather than have to insert blocks and fill them in and have that.
From what I've heard, it's not very user-friendly for the average blogger type of project, so that's why they're seeking a lot of feedback. So
Yes.
if you're not sure if it's useful, get involved and give feedback.
Right. So for the live stream, it's not necessarily user-friendly yet, but WordPress is definitely interested in getting all the feedback it can. So go to this URL, install it on your site. You can start using it now to even publish content, but even to just play around with draft content and figure out how it's doing. I think we need a lot of feedback from users at WP Campus to get that going. Which brings us to accessibility. So we have a handle on the web identity. We know how we're spreading that out across the university. We have a handle on content, trying to find more ways to keep the HTML structure updated and to kind of enforce these standards. So we talked about the WSU web crawler, which is one of my favorite tools of the year. And accessibility, I should mention, is going to be my top priority until who knows when. It's the thing I'm most excited to work about on WSU, which is great. And then it's also my top priority, the thing I'm thinking about every day when I go into work. So web crawler's given us a bunch of stuff. It also provides a layer to write tools on top of. So once you have all this data in Elasticsearch, and once you've written one Node app, then you kind of get this idea that I'm going to go write another Node app. So I started building the accessibility collector, yet another accessibility, automated accessibility scanner. So this is a Node app that goes through all of the results from the web crawler. Any URL that it responded with a 200 OK response, it then visits and runs Pally, PA11Y on, which is itself an automated accessibility scanner that loads a Phantom.js headless browser and then runs HTML code sniffer on it, which applies kind of it's a sniffer that applies the WCAG 2.0 AA standards and then returns any violations. We then log all of those violations back into Elasticsearch in another data store so that we're able to filter through and see at some level what automated results are returned. And automated scanning doesn't solve everything, but I think it's a good start to get a general sense of the health of accessibility on the web. So that's what we're using it for, is to see what's out there, and then through that and a combination of manual editing, manual auditing, figure out what needs to be done. And then we built this accessibility dashboard, which is still also in a pretty beta state. It's my first foray into CSS Grid, so it won't work in IE right now. But that's available at GitHub and publicly at dashboard.wsu.edu/accessibility. And we might have a few minutes after this I can poke around at that. But what that does is provides a public interface to the accessibility issues at WSU. So it lets everybody know these are all of our problems. But more importantly, it provides people throughout the university, content creators and subdomain owners and developers and anybody, the ability to go check their work and make sure that they're up to speed. So the first display is pretty basic, but we split it out into the error codes that are returned, the top selectors that are being found, and then the top domains. So it's fun because it wasn't too long after we launched this that there were already people that were worried about seeing their domain at the top of the list. So having it public, I think, is a good thing for the competition aspect, at least. But I guess my favorite thing, well, let's dive in just a little bit deeper. So if I chose one of those domains, then it drills in a little deeper and shows me the top selectors that have been detected for that in the top codes. The selectors are actual HTML selectors where the violations were found, which has been great for us. So this is at magazine.wsu.edu. There's the layer 1, that's what, 19,000 different violations have been found. So 19,000 pages or URLs, or maybe there's a multiple violations for the same thing. And I already know what that is. If you look at the bottom here, there's the message that shows up. It's kind of hidden, but there's a duplicate ID attribute value layer 1 found on the web page. So then I looked, and sure enough, each of the SVGs that we used for the icons were generated with InDesign. What do you use for SVGs? InDesign? Illustrator. And the default ID was layer 1. And then we shipped those in the theme and didn't take all of that data out, and then that becomes an accessibility violation. So the only thing we have to do here, which I probably should have done already, but it made a good example, is go into our GitHub theme for magazine and change the ID of the SVGs, or maybe even remove the ID completely, ship it, and then on a rescan, those 19,000 will disappear. So this has been a good way of identifying some really common issues and solving them across the board. I think within, a few hours of launching this, we noticed a few things in the central web identity that where we were able to go and just tweak a few colors and adjust a few links so that they were more accessible, and then ship it out to the university, and saw stuff start dropping down. And then there's going to be a lot of false positives here, where it detects like every link and says, does this anchor text provide the right context? And when you look at a navigation, it's like home, like about, or whatever, and of course, who knows if it provides the right context. So there's still a level of manual scanning here. There's going to have to be a layer that we build into this at some point where you can dismiss some of the more obvious ones. But for this first round, we just want to make sure we're looking at all the data possible, really trying to tackle it. And then I hope this leads us to a place where we can start contributing to tools like HTML Code Sniffer, so we can walk through making sure that it's doing things right. So yeah. Oh, and I do another detail. So right now, this is all Jeremy Felt, the designer. We list the domain, the URL where you can find it, the error code, the message, and then kind of try to show the context of where the error occurred. So you can look at that and usually go straight into your browser, view source, and see what you're dealing with. And then in the future, so like I mentioned before, all new content as of June 30 for us needs to be WCAG 2.0 accessible. That's like a daunting task because a lot of content's published. And everybody needs to go through accessibility training. So the tools we're going to start working on soon, and if you know about them, let me know so that I don't have to work on them, is scan on publish. So when you're writing content in WordPress and you go to hit publish, we need to have something that says right away, hey, like you forgot the alt text in your image, or, have you checked your anchors? Yeah.
Have you seen the Totally TOTA11Y
No.
tool? It's through, I tweeted it out already, but it's through the place that does the Mac videos that everybody watches. And it's a browser add-on.
Okay.
Anybody can just drag and drop it up there, and then it has a visual hints, and it shows you all the problems.
So that could be perfect. All right, so there's a Totally tool where the Lee is 11Y, yeah. Yeah, that does some scanning in the browser. So that's perfect. And then that goes along with content hints too, like WordPress SEO by Yoast, when you're writing, it gives you the little like red, yellow, green, or hints on what it looks like. And we want to provide similar details with, have you entered anchor text, or have you entered alt text, or that kind of thing. And then this is going to, the app we write for this will probably be pretty WSU specific, but we're hoping to do all of our training through our HRS kind of training modules. I forget what it's called. And then attach whether a person has taken training to their AD profile. So then when they log into WordPress, if there's a nay there, then we say you can't hit the publish button or the update button until you go do this, which will be fun. I don't know. It'll be possible, hopefully. So yeah, all of that, I think my statement here is that properly managed identity and properly managed content are going to lead to properly managed accessibility, as long as you're starting with accessibility in mind and really trying to focus on that. And I think that's the kind of stance that I have to take now, especially. I think if you went back and told me that we were going to get an OCR complaint and we were going to have to do all this, I probably still wouldn't have believed you. But I'm happy we're in this place because we now have 2 years and a bunch of resources to get it all done. And then the best part, I mean, I mentioned this before, but everything we write is open source. If you have questions about any of those tools, just ask me over the next couple days. If you want to start contributing to one, please feel free. I'm happy to help you get ramped up in any way. Besides the ones I've shown you, we have 250 or so repositories. A lot of them are child themes, but quite a few are plugins that you may find useful. And if you're trying to solve a problem, let me know, and I may be able to help out. Or not, but we'll see. Thanks. And I think we have 5 minutes. I don't want to stop the applause. 5 minutes for questions. Yeah.
So with that, all the information you gave about content, good, you answered my first question. But the second question then is just specifically about that people directory.
Mhm.
Does that apply to faculty and staff, or does that also include students who turn over much faster?
Right. So the question is, does the people directory apply to faculty and staff or also students? So right now we're doing just faculty and staff. There's I guess the double thing there is there's a lot of students and there's a lot of turnover there. There's also what is classified as personal identifiable information, PII or whatever, and whether we really want to track all of that. So at some point I could see that especially like grad students might end up on there, like research lab assistants, but often they're already classified in some way as staff. But we'll be able to pull all of that hopefully automatically from Active Directory and put it in there. Yeah.
You talked about your kind of trying to adopt some kind of consistent taxonomy.
Mhm.
For all these stuff. You talked about kind of personally just wanting to follow one of these threads maybe on your own. Has your institution thought about how to maybe visualize that, how to push that and make that? I've seen attempts to do that, but it looks like you've got a real possibility for an interface there.
Right.
A real interesting opportunity for both.
To build on that, the other thing you might want to do is check if your library has an archivist who's already doing that. Because a lot of times that's key for institutional archives
Right.
to have that in place.
Right.
Yeah, it sounds like a headache to me, but I mean, if you're actually doing the headache, there's a great possible interface.
Yeah.
A very dynamic opportunity for people to see what WSO is. Are you guys thinking of that? Or,
Yeah.
I know maybe that's not your.
Oh no, it's totally,
Okay.
yeah. So the question is basically, have we thought about creating an interface for the taxonomy, a public place to view it?
Yeah. It's a little nicer than.
Exactly. We have thought a lot about it. We have done nothing. So, but that's so when I talk about using the web crawler and trying to find some meta information there, ideally one day we're all publishing our content with the taxonomy, and then yeah, it would be fantastic to have, I don't know if it's taxonomy.wsu.edu or what, but some page where you can go and see all the streams and visualize how the taxonomy is built out. Right now, our user interface in WordPress isn't even that great for it, so we have to, the baby steps of higher ed. But yeah.
Thanks for a great presentation. There's some amazing things that you're working on to help the organization. Have you seen any pushback on any of these? And if not, how do you prioritize company consensus?
So have we seen any pushback on things, and then how do we prioritize what we're doing? Not a lot of pushback. I think the way that we've built the web community, I think we've done good at then avoiding pushback on things like identity, because we really are taking the feedback of stuff we're screwing up, stuff we're not doing great. There's a lot of push forward, like this people directory I've been promising people for 2 years now, and it used to be like, when's it going to be ready? And I would say it's going to be ready in 2 months, and then it wouldn't be ready in 2 months. So I finally told people, if I give you a date, you aren't going to get it. So like, wait for it. So a lot of people are excited about the stuff we're building, which has been great. And it can be hard to prioritize, but I think what it comes down to there, sadly enough, or good enough, I mean, the priorities of higher ed are defined by who has money, basically. And then when a big group comes to us and says, as part of this marketing effort, we need to build out research.wsu.edu or medicine.wsu.edu, then that can often give us time as part of that process to say, well, now we need a faculty directory for this to really make it look good. We should spend time building out this central tool. And then some days, you know, it's not busy and you can kind of prioritize yourself, but it's just no perfect answer, but chug forward.
I think that's about it.
Great. Yeah, feel free to stop anytime.